Hello, I'm DJ Kaiser. I'm happy to be here with you as an English language specialist sponsored by the US Department of State and from Webster University. We will begin this session in just a little bit. So we are doing this session live on Zoom and also live on YouTube with chat. And then it will be available to view on YouTube at a later date. So we'll just wait a bit to get the link shared. So if you're on YouTube, look for that link to get shared. And as I look at YouTube, I'm seeing that the link has just been shared. So you may click on that because this is a participatory session. So even if you're watching this afterwards, you'll be able to see what the participation looks like. And as I go through the presentation, I will be explaining to you different things that we're doing so that we can make our classes more interactive when using Zoom. And so for those of you who are waiting, I've got two screens going here. So the one in front of me has Zoom as I wait for people to connect in Zoom here. And then I have another screen that allows me to follow YouTube and to see the comments and questions that may come up there. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and start. And as we get more people, I did this session earlier this week, and we found that people started joining later on. So we invite you to make that shift over if you are joining us live. Otherwise, I will talk you through the process. So this is, you can't replicate an in-person classroom online, or can you? The MRTR framework. And so Good. We have people who are starting to join us now. And what I'd like to ask people to do is to rename themselves. So I'm showing you here, if you click on participants, when you're in Zoom, there is this feature that allows you to rename yourself. So you click more and then you select rename. Also, if you're viewing your picture on Zoom and you see those three dots, you can click those three dots and then rename yourself. If you can add where you are. So if you have your name and then follow your name with where you are. And so I am going to do that right now, where I'm going to rename myself. So right now my name is entered in as DJ Kaiser, and I'm going to add to it St. Louis, Missouri, USA, which is where I live and where I currently am. And that will change my name for other participants. It should do that. Let me try that one more time. There we go. Now that has renamed me. So we'll be talking about how we can use this rename feature for pedagogical purposes. So before we start, I would really like to give a special thanks to Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán. They've been a great host. We've got David here running all the technology from multiple rooms. He does such an amazing job. Everyone with UPN-FM has been great in helping get everything prepared. And then also a special thanks to the Embassy of the United States of America for sponsoring this conference. Also, as part of a English language specialist project, we're asked to have photos of the projects that we do. And due to the pandemic, I can't be there in Honduras to meet all of you and do a big group picture. So if there's time at the end of this, what I will ask is for people to turn on their cameras and to do a group screenshot. We'll call it a Zoomie. So if you don't want to be part of that, just leave your camera off. But we do have this consent to use photographic images and audio for that. Also, I do want to make sure that I wish all of you well and much safety. I know that in Honduras, you just recently had both Hurricane Eta and Iota, and all of us around the world are still dealing with COVID-19, and we're looking forward to changes in 2021, that this will get better for all of us around the world. So just a little background about me for those of you who have not gotten to meet me yet. Some of you have been in some of my other sessions or watched them on YouTube. My name's DJ Kaiser. I have some experience with video conference and the use of technology for instruction. And I wanted to share some of that relevant experience to help you understand where I'm coming from. I did a Fulbright in Uruguay studying the project Cebal en Inglés, which uses video conference to teach English in elementary and secondary schools. And after that project, I went to Rio de Janeiro to study the project English Works, which uses video conference to teach both adult learners and younger learners. Then more recently, I've been very involved in using Zoom at my university, Webster University. I was on a campus-wide committee on the implementation of Zoom, and especially how that we could use it for instructional purposes. Our program, Teaching English as a Second Language, is in St. Louis, online in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So I have been meeting with our faculty and with students, doing teacher training and doing seminars for our teacher candidates using Zoom. So I will be talking today about some of the things that I've been using in those sessions, as I have had to take in-person, previously prepared materials and shift them to a virtual environment. So there are two different parts to my presentation, two different presentations. Twice I've already given the presentation on taking a digital inventory to maximize remote instruction and plan for challenges. So please go to YouTube and look for that. That focuses more on the planning side. This presentation is going to focus a lot more on the pedagogy, and there will be some more interactive pieces, especially for those who are in the Zoom session. And here's the title again for that. You can't replicate an in-person classroom online, or can you? The MRTR framework. So just some housekeeping. We will be using Zoom for this. At times, I will ask you to participate in different ways. We're going to use some breakout rooms. We're going to use the chat. We're going to use the nonverbal reactions, also the rename feature. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, what I will try to do for you is to narrate things that you are not able to participate in. And then also for those of you watching on YouTube later, this will help you understand what was going on during the session so that you can reflect on that. Please do respect that I am watching chat here and chat on YouTube and trying to get through the slides. So I may not be able to get to questions until the end. And please do mute yourself and keep yourself on mute because it will be picked up and other people will be able to hear you. So thank you. So here's how we're going to start. For those of you who are in Zoom, I want you to click on participants, and it's going to pull up the list of participants, but you're going to see this green yes and this red no. For those of you who are on YouTube Live, you can respond by typing true or false, but we're going to do a true or false. In Zoom, we're going to use the participant section with the nonverbal feedback, and I'm going to ask you to click either a green yes for true or a red no for false on 3 different statements. And again, on YouTube, you could just type true or false for these. And so you may want to, in the chat, if you use the chat, put number 1, number 2, number 3, so we know which one you are responding to. So number 1, there is no interaction in the language classroom when you teach online or remotely. True or false? Click green yes for true or no, red no for false. And so what happens is in the participants window, individual participants can see how other people are responding, but as the host, so as the teacher, I'm able to see a tally. So right now we've got 5 responses. So I'm going to use some teacher wait time here and ask people in Zoom to again click on participants. And when you click on participants, look for the green yes and the red no, and see if you can add to our tally there. So this is using some teacher wait time, especially whenever we use any new affordances. So affordances are different aspects of the programs or platforms that we use and how those work. So right now we've got 4 people saying no and 1 person saying yes. So hopefully we can get more people who can participate in the second one. So I'm going to clear these answers and ask people to respond again to number 2. It is impossible to do group work when teaching online or remotely. So again, click green yes if you believe this statement is true, and click no red if you believe that this statement is false. So again, I'll do some teacher wait time, see if we can get a few more people to respond. Okay, we got a few more responses. So we've got 4 people saying no and 2 saying yes. So no saying false and 2 saying true. I'm gonna again clear these responses and do number 3. So most effective methods and strategies for language teaching cannot be done when teaching online or remotely. And again, click green yes if you believe that this is true, or click no false if you believe that this is false. And we're getting responses here. 6 people saying that this is false, 7 false, and no one saying that this is true. Okay, good. And as I'm checking over in the YouTube, I'm seeing some responses of false. I will go ahead and clear these responses so we can move on. So All of these statements are false. And so one of my goals with this presentation is that by the end of this, you will understand why these statements are false when we're talking about remote instruction. So my goals for this session today are, first of all, to confront some myths about remote teaching and language instruction. We just did that with a short activity. Then we're going to explore what I call the MRTR framework to make explicit ways that we can purposefully use technology tools when we are shifting in-person activities to remote instruction. And then we're going to test out some ways to increase participation when working on Zoom. So as you're joining Zoom, please get ready to participate because we'll have more sections for this. And we're going to ask all of you, so whether you are with us live in Zoom, live on YouTube, or watching this afterwards, to reflect on ways that we can adapt our own in-person instruction to teaching on Zoom and then also other platforms. So let me talk about this MRTR model. So the MRTR model stands for Model, Relate, Test, and Reflect. And there are two different people involved in this. So one is the teacher trainer or the faculty member. So I'm doing this in the context of preparing teachers to work with teaching English in their classes. Then we've got teachers in training. So these are English teachers who are going through professional development or going through a program. So for the teacher trainer or the faculty member, he or she will do the model or relate part, and I'll explain what these are. And then the teachers in training will do the testing and the reflecting. So let's break down these four. So model is modeling the technique or use of the affordance. So if you saw my other presentation, I went into more detail about affordance. So affordance can be the use of the chat feature or the whiteboard or the renaming feature or the nonverbal yes and no that we just used. So those would be examples of affordances. Then the teacher trainer should also relate the technique or the affordance to how it could potentially meet the needs of students in the teachers who are going through the training or the professional development. So my goal here is to model this and then relate it to how you might be able to use it when you are teaching remotely. Then on the teacher trainer side, teachers who are going through professional development, we're going to ask these student teachers or in professional development to test this technique or affordance either during the class or during the professional development session or later with their own students. So in this session, those of you who are with me in Zoom, you will have the opportunity to test this out with me. For those of you who are on YouTube watching this later, you can test this out in your own classroom. And then finally, we want to ask our student teachers, our teachers who are going through professional development to reflect on the technique or affordance and how well it might or did work for students. And so all of us can reflect on this. So the purpose of the MRTR framework is to allow teacher trainers and faculty members who are working with and providing professional development to English teachers is to explicitly model ways to adapt in-person pedagogy to a remote teaching environment. So a lot of us, I find, are struggling with this, and it takes a new set of skills, or we take our problem-solving and creative skills and use them in new ways. So all teachers also can use the MRTR framework with their students to be explicit about the kinds of changes and modifications that we're doing for a virtual environment. So we're going to go ahead and test this out. So for those of you who are in Zoom, you can join me here. And so we're going to be talking about the use of Zoom, but the same technique of MRTR can be used for other video conference platforms. So if you're using Skype or if you're using Google Meet or other platforms, it can be used. But what I will be modeling today is on Zoom. So one of my favorite activities to do when I'm teaching and when I do seminars is something that's called Numbered Heads Together by Kagan. and it's part of cooperative learning. What we do with numbered heads together is we put students into groups, and the classic number is groups of 4. So we get people into those groups of 4, and then each of them will get a number. So one person will be 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4. So they count off 1, 2, 3, 4. I also like to use other types of designations. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you could use colors. So green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red. Oh, I've got green, yellow, red, red. I've got red twice. So it should be green, yellow, red, blue. You can use the 4 suits of a deck of cards. I also like using the 4 seasons. The purpose here is that all people in the group need to be prepared to share back, because I will put you into groups to discuss something and you're going to have to share back. When we come back to the large group, I'm going to call a number, or I'm going to call a color, or I'm going to pull a card from a deck of cards. And that is the person from the group who will need to share the responses for their group and be the representative. So can we replicate this on Zoom? And we're going to try this out. So we've got enough people here in Zoom to do this. So I'm going to put the people in Zoom into random groups of 4. So a lot of times when I do sessions, I will pre-assign groups, but here it's random. I don't know who I'm getting. So we're going to do this randomly. So when you get into your group of 4, the first task that you're going to do is count off by alphabetical order. So the person whose first name comes first alphabetically will be 1, and then the second person 2. So like Alba's 1, Danielle 2, Nora 3, Bilma 4, if those were 4 names. And make sure that you remember your number in your group. So the task that we're going to do is, so after you've named yourself or numbered yourself 1 through 4, I'm going to ask you in your group to brainstorm things that I should do when I get a chance to visit Honduras or Central America. So I've not had the opportunity to come to Honduras. I'm looking forward to going someday. So I need you, those of you in Honduras who are experts, to give me advice. So you're going to come up with 2 full sentences. So make sure it's a full sentence. And one sentence needs to use the gerund form of the verb, such as walking, eating, or dancing. The second sentence must use an infinitive form, such as to walk, to eat, to dance. So don't just say walking in the park or to walk in the park. You need to put it in a sentence. So go for a full sentence. So I'm going to put you into groups, but remember, you don't know which group members I am going to ask to share back their responses. So everyone in the group needs to be prepared. So let me go ahead, and you only got 3 minutes, so you're going to have to work fast. So let me pull up the breakout rooms here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the number of rooms. Right now it says that I've got 24 people. So if I do 6 rooms, then I can get 4 to 5 people in a room. So let me go ahead and create the breakout rooms. And I'm going to click on options and set it to 3 minutes. And I will invite people to go into the breakout rooms for 3 minutes. So right now I've opened up all of the rooms. So now as the teacher, as the moderator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at people joining, because Zoom gives you a little bit of time to join. So right now people are in their breakout room and they're actually not hearing me. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're able to hear me. And I'm narrating to you what's going on. So are people in? I just want to check, because my cursor is doing something a little strange. Here we go. So if I was going to be doing a longer activity and giving groups a longer amount of time, One of the things that I like about Zoom with the breakout rooms is that I have the ability to click join, and I can join that group to check in and see how that group is doing. And then I can leave that room and check in on the next group. So it's just like if I had people at different tables, I could go around to each of the different tables. There's also a feature where people can ask for help, and then I can go into that group. What I can also do is I can send a broadcast message to everyone. So it says broadcast a message to all. So especially if we have more time, I can do that. I like to send the instructions another time in the chat. So actually I'm going to do that right now. Remember to create 2 full sentences, one with a gerund and one with an infinitive. And I will send that. And so that will broadcast to everyone. So that broadcast feature is very helpful. Also, as people come in late, you can assign them to a new group. So I'm going to go ahead and someone came in, and I'm going to go ahead and shift her into a group who needed another member. So again, I've got another person here that I'm going to go ahead and assign. So this also works when you're teaching in an environment where people are coming in and out. This is really important because if you watched my other presentation, one of the things that we talked about is that many times that when we're teaching, people have bad connections. And so they may lose their connection and then they're reconnecting to the same classroom. So you may have people in groups and then you have to re-put them into groups. So when I'm teaching or leading a seminar, I always like to have this participant panel up. So now I'm going to go ahead and close the rooms and bring everyone back. Okay, so it takes a moment for people to come back. So I'm going to look at the participant list, and I start to see those numbers grow as people leave their breakout room and come back into the main room. Okay, so people had 3 minutes, and I know it's a very short amount of time, but we're doing short demos here. If we had a longer time, a longer period of time, we would definitely spend more time. So again, for sharing back, it's important that only the numbered person, the person whose number I call, shares for that group. And the reason we do this pedagogically is when we do group work, I'm sure we are all familiar with those students who always have their hand raised and they always want to speak for their group. And then there are other students who end up not speaking. So what this does is for those students who are always raising their hand, they wait for their turn until their number is called. And for the student who needs to be called on, this gives an opportunity for that student to be called on. And over the course of a class, I can call on all of the different numbers. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the chat, and I'm going to ask only the person whose number I call to share their group's response in the chat. So this is what should DJ do? And so the first one is, let's ask the person who's number 2, so second alphabetically, to share in the chat one sentence that uses the gerund form of what I should do when I get to visit Honduras. And then if you are joining us live on YouTube, I invite you to share with me and the rest of us something that we should do if we visit your country. So if you're, please share what your country is, and then a recommendation of what we should do, but make sure that you use a gerund form. So I'm going to take a look at responses here. Let's see. You should be dancing punta music all night. You should go swimming in the crystal clear blue water. That sounds nice. And I'll just check to see if we have anything in the YouTube. I'm going to see if I can wait for one more response in Zoom. We don't have as many groups, but just as we do in an in-person classroom, we need to do teacher wait time. And I know as teachers, we get uncomfortable with silence or with not being able to move forward. But when we're using technology, and especially when we don't have that eye contact with people, especially when we're doing screen sharing, we need to be more mindful of our teacher wait time. And so let's see, eating baleadas is the best thing in Tegucigalpa. I've heard that many times. I don't know what baleadas are, but I am sure I will love them. So thank you, groups, for sharing your sentences with gerund forms. Now I'm going to ask the person who's number 4, so last alphabetically, to share in the chat one sentence response that uses an infinitive form of what I should do when I visit Honduras. So again, if you're joining us live on YouTube, I invite you to let us know what country you're in and share a sentence, a full sentence using the infinitive form of what we should do if we get to visit your country. And so we got one more of the gerund being shared. So walking is a good exercise. Let me go ahead and check to see in the YouTube if there are any responses there to share. No, so I'm going to do some teacher wait time for our infinitive sentence. So again, another thing to think about is with our students, how they are connecting. So right now I'm on a laptop and I've got a keyboard, and so I'm used to typing and I can type fast. If we're teaching on Zoom and our students are connecting on a mobile phone, so they will be connecting this way and they may have their earbuds in. They're going to have to go to another screen for the chat, and then they're typing on the keyboard that is on their screen. So it may take them a little bit longer to write their response, and you may need to repeat the instructions verbally because they may not be able to see what you have shared on the screen. So I'm going to wait just another minute and see if we get a person number 4 to share a sentence of what I should do in Honduras using an infinitive form. And so I love to write poems, and you have to go to Roatan Island when you get a chance to visit Honduras. We got 2 infinitives there, to go and to visit. Be ready to meet cool people. All right, I love that. Cool people in Honduras. And be ready to meet great people. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing those responses. So notice that each group member in that activity had to be prepared to share both a sentence with the gerund and a sentence with the infinitive. So if you have students who they don't know how to use one form or the other yet, other people in the group are going to be helping them out so everyone gets to that same level. If we had a smaller number of people and I had more time, another thing that I could do is ask different people from the groups to unmute and share their responses. So when I teach seminars, I will have a list of the groups. I will put them into groups. We do numbered heads together. And then I will say, okay, for group number 6, I would like that person to unmute. Now let's do group number 5. And let's have the person who's red unmute. I also want you to notice that with this communicative activity, there is focus on form. So I didn't just ask you to tell me what are things that I should do when I come visit Honduras. You are the experts on that. You have the content knowledge of that. But what I want to see is your linguistic knowledge and how you can put that into the context of giving me advice of what to do in Honduras. So with MRTR, so our MRTR framework, so I modeled this activity for you of using numbered heads together, Kagan's numbered heads together. I also related this to how we could use this in a smaller setting and how we could change doing typed responses to spoken responses to turn this into a speaking activity. Then also you all, those of you who are on Zoom got to test this out. I hope that those of you who are teaching classes remotely using Zoom or another video conference platform will try this out and see how it works. And in the interest of time, I'm going You can go ahead and put reflections both in the Zoom chat and also on YouTube of how you might use this in your own classroom. So it's always great as teachers if we can share our reflections. I love this because when people share things, teachers come up with ideas I didn't think of. So please share your ideas. I love getting those ideas. Okay, the next one that we're going to do is we're going to model a stand-up, sit-down activity. And I'm going to invite everyone to participate in this. So if you are live with us on Zoom, you will be able to use the green yes for stand up and the red no for sit down. But I'm also going to ask you to stand up and sit down. So to literally go ahead, stand up and sit down, just as we would have students do in a classroom. If you are with us in YouTube Live, so you can also add a yes and a no in the chat, but I also would like you to stand up and sit down. And if you're watching us afterwards on YouTube, please go ahead and do the stand up and sit down. It's a really great idea for us as teachers to test out what does it feel like on the student side. So if you have done this as a student, as a participant, then you can empathize and you understand what this will be like for your students. And so also a reason to do this with the stand up sit down is a lot of us are spending a lot of time in front of our computers on Zoom or on other platforms to teach remotely. So sometimes we need to stand up to get the blood flowing. So remember, for those of you in Zoom, go ahead, click on participants so you can use the yes and the no. So here's our stand up sit down activity. Stand up, yes, if on the weekend you like to walk in the park. Sit down if it is no. So I'm going to look for the yeses and nos in the participants. And I hope that those of you who are clicking yes are also standing up. And so as I'm waiting for responses, I'm getting a question. Can you do all these activities in Zoom free version? That's a good question. So with the Zoom free version, you'll have to see how many of these affordances are available. And I believe there's breakout rooms in the free version. If someone else knows and can share that in the chat, please let me know. The big thing with the free version is it limits you to 40 minutes. Okay, so we had 5 yeses and 1 no. I'm going to clear that. And as a follow-up, in the chat, please type if this sentence uses a gerund or an infinitive verb form. So I'm going to look. And thank you. Gloria shared that yes, breakout rooms are in the free version. This is why we love the chat for things like this. Teachers are resourceful. So does this sentence have the gerund or infinitive form? And again, I'm going to use my teacher wait time. And we've got infinitive. Okay, good. So next, stand up or sit down. Stand up, yes, if during holiday seasons you enjoy spending time with your family. Sit down if the answer is no. And so again, I'm going to watch for the yeses and the nos in the participant list. Also going to take a look at the chat for YouTube Live. All right, and we've got, so far, everyone is saying yes. So everyone so far enjoys spending time with their family. And I'm going to ask the same follow-up question in the chat. Please type if this sentence uses a gerund or an infinitive form. And now people are faster on the response. So this is something that I've learned when teaching through Zoom and teaching in using different tools remotely, is when you do an activity the first time, students or participants may not do it the way that you expected. That doesn't mean that you abandon it. It means that you may need to give a little more time and you may need to explain a little bit more. As you start to repeat activities, it becomes easier to do it. So the first time I did Kagan's numbered heads together in Zoom, it was a little bit difficult. Second time we did it, it worked really well. So trust me, try it out. Okay, one more sentence. Stand up, yes, if one of your hobbies is watching TV shows in English. Sit down if no. And again, I'm going to watch the responses of yes and no. And getting a lot of yeses, one no so far. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and click ahead to, in the chat, please type if this sentence uses a gerund or infinitive form. And also, if you said yes, what show are you watching? Because I always like to know, what are people watching when they're watching shows in English? So, and this is the gerund form. So we had 3 sentences here, just to quickly review. You like to walk. To walk is the infinitive form. Enjoy spending time. Spending is the gerund. And then hobbies is watching TV shows. That is the gerund form. So MRTR, notice how I modeled the stand up, sit down modification. If you're standing now, you can go ahead and sit, but feel free to stand up if you like. And so I encourage you to stand up and sit down wherever you are. Also notice how there was focus on form awareness. I'm very much a fan of doing focus on form whenever teaching. I also related to the common situation of our students being seated too long, so Zoom fatigue. And then we tested this activity out. So even if you're watching this not live, you got to test this out. And in the interest of time, I'll ask you to reflect after you try this out with your own classroom, or you may go ahead and share that in the chat now if you're live with us. So next I want to talk about a bingo activity. So bingo activity is very popular to get students up and out of their seat and moving around and talking and interacting with other students. So it may seem like bingo activity, interactive, this is impossible to do if I'm teaching on Zoom. Maybe not the case. So let's see what we might be able to do. So also give us a thumbs up if you have used bingo activities in your classroom, not virtually, but in your in-person classroom. So bingo activities are common, as I mentioned, and we're going to try to recreate this in our Zoom environment. So we're going to use the chat feature here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to send individual messages. So in chat, there's a little blue bar, and then you can select who the message goes to. So I want you to randomly select people to ask yes or no questions, and then have them respond to you yes or no. So as a participant live in Zoom, you have to think about, and those of you on YouTube, think about how you would write or ask these yes no questions. Would you say have you, or would you do have you ever? So have you and have you ever so slightly different. And then note that sometimes the past tense verb, because you're going to see past tense verbs on the bingo card, may be different than the past participle. So went versus gone, broke versus broken. So we're going to take, I'm actually just going to make that, well, we'll go ahead, take 3 minutes to start this activity and see if you can ask at least 3 different people who you don't know, different yes, no questions, and see if you can fill in the square on your bingo card. So you may just want to take some notes yourself on a piece of paper. And then also keep track of any verbs that have a past participle that is different from the past tense of the verb. And so here is the bingo card. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set a timer here. So in the chat, what you're going to do is go ahead, randomly select people to ask yes, no questions to. If you'd like to, on YouTube Live, you could start to formulate questions that you would ask. If you're watching this later on YouTube, look through and start to figure out what are the types of questions that you would need to ask. Think about which questions will be easier for your students to create and which may not be. Again, not all of the verbs are going to be as easy to do when we shift to a have you, because we'll have to move to using the past participle. So for those of you who saw my first presentation, one of the things that I talked about is when we're teaching remotely, that sometimes we end up using more than one device. So right now I am presenting using my laptop. I'm in my office where I happen to have 2 monitors, which helps me, especially when I'm doing a seminar like this. But I have one laptop. But as you notice here, I also have my phone. And so I like to use the timer on my phone. So this is just another thing that I can use. That way I don't have to mess with anything that's on my desktop while I'm doing that. Also, sometimes what I'll do is I've got my iPad here, and so I might hook that up and I might have something else going. So it's something else to consider. Maybe you're using a Google document and you're trying to monitor what is going on. So if you've got a laptop and you don't have extra monitors like I do right here, and I've done this, I will be teaching using my laptop, and then I will connect my iPad to the external document that we're using if I'm using a Google document. So then I can look on my iPad and see what people are doing and what they're sharing on the Google document. And then I keep everything together. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this activity now. So if you didn't get to 3 people, that's okay. So I want you to consider the size of your class. So today we had 28 people. I did the same activity yesterday and we had, I think it was around 80 people. So with 80 people, there were a lot more people to choose from randomly. Then how might we modify this for a classroom of only 10 students? And so then you might have to start asking the same people over again. So what rules do you come up with for how many people do you have to ask before you go back to someone? Then also think about, could you do this activity remotely outside of Zoom? So perhaps you could do this via WhatsApp. So if you have all of your students in a WhatsApp group, you could have them send audio messages to each other to ask these questions. They could send individual messages to each other, and perhaps they put the person's name and then ask the question, and then that person responds back with that person's name. And then you as the instructor can watch the whole chat, and then you could be looking at the formation of yes/no questions and how they did with the verbs. This could be done over a longer period of time. So there are other modifications that we can do. So also consider that with this, there's again that focus on form, big theme for me. So there's the use of yes/no questions, the use of ever, and then also the past tense versus the past participle. So Four Corners, another activity that is very popular in in-person classrooms. And so the question is, can we replicate this on Zoom? So if this is an activity where people go to different corners, how do we do this in Zoom? And I will tell you, I have done 4 corner activities on Zoom. So this can be done. And I'm not sure if we're gonna have enough time today. So I think I'm going to talk you through it. So in order to do a 4 corners activity, first you're going to need to share the prompt for the activity where you will define the 4 corners. And I'll show you what this looks like. And then what you're going to do is you're going to ask the students to rename themselves in order to select the corner. Because with Zoom, students cannot select the breakout room that they want to go into. And I've gotten this question before. Can students select which room they want to go into? Zoom does not allow that. So you as the teacher, when you are the host, and you have to be the host in order to do breakout rooms, you have to select. So instead of doing random, you will manually put students into breakout rooms. Now, I'll show you what this looks like. So then you'll put the students into the breakout rooms, which are their corners, based on how they rename themselves. So let's take an example here of, so working with teachers here, professional development for teachers, a conference. In general, which of the 4 skills, reading, writing, listening, or speaking, do you feel that you need the most help with in order to become a stronger English teacher? So we all have those skills that we feel really good about it. And then there's those 1 or 2 that we would like a little more assistance with. So what I would do is ask all the participants to select what that is. And you would rename yourself and put the corner that you would go into before your name. So again, you go to participants and you click rename. And so what I would do is, and what I'm going to do is just very quickly, I'm going to rename myself just so you can see what this looks like. And I would put reading DJ Kaiser. And so I have renamed myself. For some reason, it didn't rename me. Let me try one more time right here. There we go. I've renamed myself. And so what I would do then is I would go to put people manually into breakout rooms, and I would make one room reading and click all the people who selected reading, and then another one writing, and then click all those people. So we don't have enough time to do this. And so there's also a modification that could be done. And I created a Google document that could be used for this. And then I'll share what this looks like. So I will go ahead and drop this link in the chat for both groups so that if you would like to find this activity, but I'm also going to show you what this looks like. So if you put together these 4 corners on a shareable Google document, you can allow people to put their names in the corner, and then on their own computer or device, they're adding to the chat as to what are things they would like to learn or strategies that they can brainstorm together. Okay, so consider how virtual 4 corners might work in the classes that you teach. And so as we relate this to your classroom and think about your students and kind of reflect on this, I want you to think about 2 different ways that we might be able to do this. So imagine if we're using Zoom and we use the rename feature and the breakout rooms. So how comfortable do you feel doing that? And then how do you think your students will react to this? And then there's the Google Doc that I shared with you. So what might that be like? And how would your students react to that? So in the chat, I invite you to share which of the 2 you feel would be most effective in engaging your students and why. Okay, so just to revisit the MRTR framework, what you can do as a teacher is model ways that you can adapt instruction to the platforms that are available to your teachers. So if you are teaching someplace where you are using Google Meet, then you will adapt it to that. You can explicitly relate how your adaptation or modification might meet their instructional needs in their context and with their students. You can ask your teachers to test this out, either with you live or with their own students, and then ask them to reflect upon that. So we are very short on time, so I'm going to quickly click through this. I would do a post test of true or false on these 3 statements. And my hope is that by the end of this presentation that you have found that all 3 of these statements are false. And so as a teacher, be explicit about the ways that you're modifying and adapting pedagogy to meet the needs of using available resources. Then vary the kinds of activities and ways that you include interaction in your classrooms. Ask your students for feedback. See, how did this adaptation work? How did this modification work? Did you like that? Adjust as needed. I've made adjustments throughout this conference of different activities. It's a great exercise for me, and it's what keeps me fresh in the classroom. And then be creative and make things fun. I know as teachers, you're always going to make things fun. So we don't have time to take a group picture together, I wish I had time to do that. I thank you for sharing with me your recommendations of what I can do when I go to Honduras. I invite you to follow me on Twitter at DJ Kaiser _ PhD. And I'm told that we've got 1 minute left. So if you would like to go ahead and turn on your camera and we'll do the selfie. And so this will be optional for you. So we can do a quick selfie and then we will be at the end. So we're going to do a big smile. 1, 2, 3, cheese. One more. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Thank you so much. Greatly enjoyed participating in this with you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for sharing with us your knowledge and all of this that you have shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.